There's something deeply mysterious about INFJs, the way they seem to feel everything so intensely, love so deeply, and yet so often end up with the wrong people. In this video, we're looking into the heart of why that happens. Why do INFJs, who can read emotions, understand pain, and love beyond words, constantly attract those who drain, misuse, or misunderstand them? Stay with me till the end, because understanding this might just change how you see every relationship in your life. One of the main reasons INFJs attract the wrong people is their extraordinary emotional sensitivity. They can sense pain, insecurity, and hidden emotions in others long before anyone else can. This makes them natural healers, the kind of souls who believe they were put on earth to help others find peace. But this sensitivity becomes a double-edged sword. Because they instinctively want to fix, heal, or help, they often find themselves entangled with people who are emotionally unavailable, manipulative, or deeply wounded. People who see the INFJ's compassion as an invitation to dump their pain rather than face it. These wrong types of people are usually drawn to INFJs like moths to light because they can feel that the INFJ sees through their mask. Most people go through life never being fully understood, but when they meet an INFJ, it feels like someone finally gets them without judgment. This emotional intimacy can feel intoxicating for someone who's used to being misunderstood. But instead of growing from that connection, many take advantage of it. They lean too heavily on the INFJ's emotional labor, draining their energy until the INFJ begins to lose themselves in the process of trying to save another. INFJs also tend to project their own goodness onto others. Because they see potential so clearly, they often fall in love not with who someone is, but with who they could become. This idealistic view blinds them to red flags. They'll convince themselves that the person's coldness is just a defense mechanism, that the manipulative behavior comes from trauma, or that the inconsistency means they just need more love and understanding. Their deep-rooted belief in human redemption keeps them stuck in toxic cycles with people who have no intention of changing. This is further complicated by the INFJ's introverted nature. They crave meaningful, soulful connections in a world that often feels shallow. When they finally find someone who seems to mirror their depth or intensity, they tend to hold on tightly, even if the relationship begins to harm them. They can mistake emotional chaos for passion and assume that the intensity means something profound, when in truth it might just be dysfunction disguised as connection. INFJs have a rare emotional stamina. They can tolerate an incredible amount of emotional turbulence without breaking. Because of this, unhealthy people, especially narcissists, energy vampires, or overly dependent individuals, see them as safe havens. The INFJ's empathy and patience make others feel secure enough to show their darkness. But instead of reciprocity, the INFJ often receives disrespect, neglect, or exploitation. They give endlessly, hoping their love will inspire change, but often end up empty, wondering why their kindness always seems to backfire. Another reason they attract the wrong people lies in their mysterious and almost ethereal energy. They are deeply private yet emotionally expressive, logical yet compassionate, wise yet vulnerable. This paradox fascinates people. Many are drawn to them out of curiosity or intrigue, but they mistake the INFJ's quiet intensity for something romantic or otherworldly. Some approach with selfish intentions, wanting to possess that light for themselves, while others simply don't have the emotional maturity to handle the depth an INFJ brings into a relationship. To an INFJ, love is a sacred merging of souls. To many others, it's a game or a temporary escape. This mismatch leads to heartbreak. INFJs also struggle with boundaries. They often feel guilty for saying no or prioritizing themselves. Their empathy tells them that others' pain matters more than their own, and they fear being perceived as cold or unkind. As a result, they let people stay in their lives longer than they should, even when every instinct screams that it's time to walk away. They rationalize others' poor behavior, hoping that if they just love a little harder, understand a little deeper, or wait a little longer, things will get better. Unfortunately, that only reinforces the dynamic, teaching toxic people that the INFJ's love is unconditional even when it shouldn't be. INFJs often underestimate their own worth. They don't always see how special they are. And because they think deeply but express themselves modestly, they often settle for less than they deserve. When someone shows them even a fraction of interest or appreciation, they pour themselves into that person, thinking they've found something rare. But this generosity of spirit often attracts takers, those who sense the INFJ's willingness to give without demanding much in return. Before long, the INFJ is emotionally exhausted, realizing they've been pouring love into a bottomless cup. Ironically, INFJs are often mistaken for being stronger than they truly are. Their calm, composed demeanor makes people assume they can handle anything. So when they finally meet someone who seems chaotic, broken, or lost, they step into the role of protector, counselor, or guide. But deep down, the INFJ is yearning for someone who can protect them for a change, someone who can see through their mask and love them without needing to be rescued. Unfortunately, because they rarely show that vulnerability, the people they attract often fail to see that the INFJ, too, needs care. INFJs often attract people who mirror their hidden wounds. Beneath their wisdom and empathy lies a fear of being unseen, unheard, or misunderstood, a fear that often dates back to childhood. So when someone appears in their life who seems to need saving, the INFJ's subconscious recognizes a familiar dynamic. It feels like home, not because it's healthy, but because it mirrors an old emotional pattern. They try to heal others in ways they once wished someone had healed them. And until they recognize this cycle, they'll continue attracting people who take rather than give, who break rather than build. It's important to understand that INFJs don't attract the wrong people because they're broken. They attract them because they radiate something the world desperately needs: genuine understanding, emotional refuge, and soulful connection. And until they learn to give that same compassion to themselves, they will always be magnets for those still searching for the light they already embody. But once they do, their relationships transform from draining to divine, and they finally discover what they've been searching for all along. Not someone to fix, but someone who chooses to see them, just as they are. Another subtle but powerful reason INFJs attract the wrong types of people is because they rarely show their pain openly. To the outside world, they appear self-sufficient, calm, and unshakable, a person who doesn't need saving. Ironically, this attracts people who want the appearance of stability without doing the emotional work themselves. Such people gravitate toward INFJs because being near them feels grounding, like standing next to someone who has life figured out. The INFJ becomes a quiet emotional anchor in the storm of another person's chaos. But over time, they realize that what started as admiration has turned into dependency. The other person stops growing, leaning entirely on the INFJ's wisdom and strength, while offering little in return. INFJs are also dreamers with an old soul. They have an almost spiritual longing for connection, one that goes beyond physical attraction or surface compatibility. They crave the kind of bond where two souls can sit in silence and still feel understood. But this spiritual hunger can be misread as emotional availability by those who are merely looking for comfort. People in pain, especially those seeking refuge from their own inner emptiness, sense that the INFJ will not judge them. They interpret this acceptance as romantic or fated, when in reality, the INFJ is simply offering compassion. The relationship then becomes one-sided. The INFJ gives meaning, while the other takes solace. INFJs usually find it difficult to detach. When they love with purpose. They see relationships not as temporary arrangements, but as journeys toward mutual growth. Even when it becomes clear that the other person is wrong for them, INFJs struggle to let go because they see what the relationship could be. They internalize failure deeply, feeling that walking away means giving up on someone's potential or breaking a soul contract. This makes them susceptible to manipulation by those who sense their reluctance to abandon others, especially those who guilt-trip them with words like, "You're the only one who understands me," or, "If you leave, I'll fall apart." INFJs are truth seekers, but their empathy often clouds that truth when emotions are involved. They read people's energy so naturally that they sometimes confuse emotional familiarity with genuine compatibility. Because they can sense someone's pain so vividly, they begin to identify with it, almost feeling it as their own. This emotional mirroring makes it difficult for them to separate where their feelings end and another person's begin. And so, they stay entangled in dynamics that drain them because they've absorbed the illusion that healing the other person is part of their purpose. INFJs also carry an inherent sense of destiny in everything they do, including relationships. When they meet someone intense, broken, or mysterious, they often interpret the connection as meant to be. They think, there must be a reason this person came into my life. But sometimes that reason is not to stay. It's to learn boundaries, to evolve, or to finally stop confusing trauma for destiny. The problem is that INFJs rarely accept that lesson the first time. They believe in divine timing, in redemption, in the idea that love conquers all. Unfortunately, this idealism keeps them tethered to people who are incapable of meeting them at the same emotional depth. Because INFJs analyze everything, people, motives, meanings, they often overcomplicate relationships. They assume everyone has the same depth of intention that they do. When someone acts distant or inconsistent, the INFJ doesn't jump to they're not interested. Instead, they wonder, what pain made them this way? Or what are they afraid of? Their tendency to psychoanalyze keeps them stuck in emotional limbo, giving chances to people who should never have had access to them in the first place. The same empathy that helps them read souls also blinds them from accepting harsh truths. There's also an undercurrent of loneliness that follows most INFJs through life. Because their minds and hearts operate on a deeper frequency, they often feel alien, even in crowded rooms. That quiet loneliness makes them vulnerable to anyone who provides even a flicker of connection. Someone who simply listens or shows interest can feel like a miracle. And so, out of gratitude and longing, the INFJ may attach emotionally too quickly before verifying the person's intentions. Later, when the mask falls off, they're left wondering how they missed the signs. INFJs tend to confuse peace with emptiness. Because they're used to relationships that demand emotional labor, when they finally meet someone calm and stable, they might mistake that stillness for a lack of connection. They subconsciously associate intensity and emotional highs with love because most of their bonds have been built around healing or helping others. So when someone comes along who doesn't need saving, the INFJ might not feel the same spark. This keeps them cycling back to people who ignite their empathy rather than their peace. INFJs often struggle to receive love as deeply as they give it. They are natural givers of time, of energy, of emotion. But when someone tries to return that love, they can feel unworthy or suspicious of it. They're so accustomed to being the healer that when someone wants to nurture them, it feels foreign. This subconscious resistance can push away the right people, while the wrong ones easily slip in, because the INFJ's emotional radar is tuned to those who need rather than those who nourish. Another quiet but powerful reason INFJs attract the wrong types of people lies in their relationship with silence and subtlety. Unlike most people who voice their discomfort quickly, INFJs tend to internalize conflict. They dislike confrontation so deeply that they often absorb emotional discomfort rather than express it. This makes them appear endlessly patient and tolerant, qualities that, while admirable, also signal to emotionally immature or manipulative individuals that they can act without consequence. The INFJ's silence becomes mistaken for approval, and their restraint becomes a permission slip for disrespect. Before long, they're stuck in dynamics where they're constantly giving second chances simply because they didn't speak up the first time. INFJs also radiate a kind of inner steadiness that makes others instinctively trust them. People feel safe around them, often revealing their darkest secrets without hesitation. But what the INFJ doesn't realize is that this instant emotional intimacy can create an unbalanced relationship from the start. They become the emotional caretaker before any real foundation is built. Many people confuse that emotional safety for a deep bond, when in reality, it's one-sided. The INFJ becomes the vault where everyone stores their pain, yet few take the time to ask what's locked inside their own heart. This imbalance creates connections rooted in dependency rather than mutual growth. Another subtle truth is that INFJs often live in duality. They are both incredibly strong and quietly fragile. They endure immense emotional pain behind their serene demeanor, but they rarely show it. This hidden fragility makes them magnetically appealing to those who crave control or validation. Narcissistic or self-absorbed individuals, for instance, are drawn to INFJs precisely because they see someone who will understand their chaos without judgment. The INFJ's selflessness becomes a mirror in which such people can admire themselves endlessly, while giving nothing back. The INFJ, mistaking that reflection for connection, holds on far longer than they should. INFJs also struggle with transitions, because they form emotional bonds on such a deep level. Walking away from someone feels like tearing out a piece of their own soul. Even when they recognize toxicity, they often stay just a little longer, hoping that maybe this time, their understanding will make a difference. That hesitation gives the wrong people more room to manipulate them. The INFJ becomes trapped in a cycle of giving too much, staying too long, and healing too late. Their compassion becomes their undoing, not because it's misplaced, but because it's unconditional even in situations where boundaries are essential. A lesser-known reason INFJs attract the wrong people is because they radiate authenticity in a world obsessed with performance. Their sincerity stands out in an age of masks, and people who are desperate for validation or emotional grounding are drawn to it instinctively. But authenticity can be intimidating or destabilizing to those who aren't ready to face their own truth. Instead of rising to meet the INFJ's emotional honesty, such people often lash out, project their insecurities, or attempt to dim the INFJ's light to feel more comfortable in their own shadows. This leaves the INFJ confused. How can their genuine care evoke hostility? They fail to realize that some people simply aren't ready to be seen that deeply. INFJs rarely love halfway. When they commit, it's with every fiber of their being. They don't enter relationships lightly, and once they're in, they pour their soul into nurturing them. This intensity, while noble, attracts those who crave devotion but have no idea how to reciprocate it. The INFJ's all-in energy can feel intoxicating at first, but it often ends up being one-sided. The other person basks in the warmth of that devotion until they take it for granted. And when the INFJ finally burns out, the same people who were once desperate for their love accuse them of being distant, cold, or different. INFJs also attract people who are running from themselves. Because the INFJ offers emotional safety, such individuals feel temporarily relieved from their own internal chaos. But instead of facing their demons, they lean on the INFJ as a crutch. The INFJ becomes a substitute for healing, a living antidote to someone else's emptiness. Once the person feels better or stable, they often drift away, leaving the INFJ drained and questioning what went wrong. The truth is, nothing went wrong. The INFJ was simply a chapter in someone else's healing, not their destination. If you want to truly understand yourself and unlock your full potential as an INFJ, check out the INFJ Playbook today. The link is in the description of this video.